opposition to these three amendments have absolutely nothing to do with our admiration for our beloved firefighters. Democracy is going to be the biggest loser should these amendments pass. Democracy is about negotiation and compromise. Yet the democratic process here has been abandoned. Instead, a petition drive was initiated to fundamentally reshape the city's charter. The amendments would ultimately cause the city to lose revenue and be forced to cut resources or find new ways to increase resource revenue.
The city charter is kind of like the Constitution for our city, and it's an important document. We have agreed that we have a representative form of government, that each area of the city gets to elect a member to the city council that knows the neighbors, knows the businesses and the issues facing that area. And they hash those issues out. Someone wants to come in and change our Constitution, if you will, for their own gain, for their own benefit, so that they can skirt that process and make their own rules. And that's not good for San Antonio.
I would hope that people will not be confused and think that we are not supporting our firefighters if we don't support the charter amendments. That is not a way to settle a dispute by bringing on a burden to our government that would, in the end, create greater inequality and create less opportunity for the community services that we need for all of our people.
The proposition that would lower the threshold of the number of signatures necessary and widen the time to gather those signatures is, again, terrible public policy. And I'll tell you why. We had to pave Zarzamora Street, about 3 and 4 miles of Zarzamora Street. That was a $10 million project. So let's imagine that the city council has a similar kind of a project, but let's say somebody that's outside of the scope of that project on the other part of Zarzamora that didn't get paving this time decides they don't like it. They wanted their part to be fixed first. They could get 20,000 signatures, take 6 months to do it, and then in essence overturn a project that has been 10 years in the making.
There are so many things that go before council, and if every one of those items can then continue to be debated, we'll become a city that will constantly be having referendums on every issue, that ultimately decisions are never made, and it will cause pause in being able to allow us to move forward. It allows people who have money to be able to go and put together signatures to control how City Hall is then run. That's not for the small guy to be able to have an opportunity to be able to have a voice anymore.
If your idea is that by voting for this, I'm going to drain the swamp, it's the opposite. You're going to make the swamp creatures bigger, and you're going to give them a bigger voice in this process, because right now we're one person, one vote. This referendum process means that anybody who has the money to collect signatures now can have the ultimate say in what happens in San Antonio. If these provisions pass, then our credit rating would go down. We'd have to spend more money on interest and banking fees rather than using that extra money to add to the infrastructure that makes this a place where people want to move here and raise a family.
If they pass, we will spend the next 10 to 12 years, 20 years, 30 years trying to undo what these charter amendments are going to do. That is worth $17 million a year to our city. So instead of the $17 million going to projects in your neighborhood, drainage projects, street projects, sidewalk projects, community centers, libraries, senior centers, instead of it going to things that we care about that are in our neighborhood, it's going to be going to debt. And so the things that we're enjoying now, we're going to see less of.
We recommend strongly that you vote no against these propositions because it's critical. It will affect not only San Antonio today, but San Antonio tomorrow.
We don't agree on everything, but we do agree our city has to keep growing. So we all agree propositions A, B, and C are bad for our city. The propositions endanger our progress. They'll raise taxes, hurt our bond rating, pit neighborhoods against each other. On this, we all agree. Vote no on propositions A, B, and C.
San Antonio has raised the bar over the past several years as the only major city with a AAA bond rating, and that is due in large part to the leadership of our city manager and our city elected officials. By creating a term limit and by reducing the salary of our city manager for the future, we will be significantly hindering our ability to attract top talent to this critical position for our community, which directly translates to infrastructure, to sidewalks, to community improvements. As a reminder to everyone, this will not affect our current city manager. So regardless of how you feel about that current person in that current role, this doesn't affect that. What it does affect is our future and our ability to provide for our city and to maintain our position as a national leader for years to come.
Vision takes time. Vision is always a process, and you have to have, a leader has to have time to work that vision. It takes resources, it takes people, it takes time. It's a process. When you have term limits, it can really take away the time that's needed and cause visions to die, not giving a leader the time to work the vision that they've been given. It doesn't serve the communities such as the east side of town. It doesn't serve those communities the best.
Proposition C would give the fire union the sole right to declare an impasse in contract negotiations and force binding arbitration.
Arbitration is a process that by its nature is held in secret and out of the public view. When we're dealing with our first responders, whatever the negotiations are, they should be held in public so that everyone can take part and form their own opinion, not have a secret deal behind a closed door. It isn't about people being engaged in the process. It's giving one group of people the right to have secret negotiations when it conveniences them, and that's not fair to anyone.
Allowing the firefighters union to force negotiations into binding arbitration makes no sense. What we have here is really a strong arm tactic by the firefighters union to be able to really never negotiate in earnest.
The firefighter union propositions A, B, and C were meant as a bargaining tool to win a contract, not to do the right thing. And I can't support special interests taking away the rights of our city, whether it's a city street light or a drainage improvement project or that sidewalk that you need in your neighborhood. You have representation, and we're risking that with these propositions.
There was a gentleman there. He had a firefighter volunteer yellow shirt on. He came over to me and he asked me to sign for the firefighters petition. I told him no thank you. Very nicely, I just said no thank you, it's okay. He looked down at my t-shirt, which was the candidate's t-shirt, and he said, "We're gonna remember you, Monica Ramirez." At that point, I felt threatened because there was hardly anybody there. No doubt people love the firefighters, but what he was doing was wrong.
Myself personally experienced senior citizens by the busloads signing the petitions, and they really did not even know what they were signing because it wasn't explained to them. But this is not about Democrats and Republicans or independents. This is about a very important issue that can affect this city. It can turn this city upside down.
I remember coming out of the voting booth during the primaries, and there's this person sitting at a table outside saying, "Hey, would you sign this? It's for the firefighters." And I said, "You know, I don't know enough about it to sign it, but thank you." I just felt like the way that the propositions came to be on the ballot was not a very honest way to do it, and there wasn't a lot of information given.
If people look at the process of how these amendments came to be, they would find that this isn't about transparency and openness. This is about a small group of people having an axe to grind and wanting a fight. So they have their fight. The problem is that they want the city to be transparent when it benefits them, and they want to be able to do things in secret.
The fire union has been incredibly misleading with all the information they've been putting out. They've been putting this entire narrative out that whoever votes against us is against firefighters, which is absolutely not the case. And they've also been putting out, like Proposition B specifically, that it will actually affect the current city manager, Cheryl Scully, which is another absolute lie.
These amendments are not about firefighters. The petition peddlers who were telling you that were flat out lying to you, because what these charter amendments will do will make it harder for us to keep the fire and police services that our citizens so desperately need, because it will cost more money to do simple things like sidewalks and parks and streets. It will cost you as a taxpayer more money to get those services that you currently expect today. Our citizens are smarter than that. They don't want a city that's going in reverse. They want a city that's moving forward together. They don't want a city where they're paying more in taxes for less services. They want quality.
When we build new streets, capital improvements, those big ticket items that last a long time, we borrow money. This is the way cities finance themselves across the country. We borrow money that we can afford to then repay over time. Proposition A is going to force the rating agencies to downgrade our credit. That means that just like if you're borrowing if you're borrowing from a bank, if your credit is not as good, you're going to pay more money in interest. Drainage upgrades. These take years to plan. They cost millions of dollars to do. And if Proposition A passes, special interest groups can go oppose one particular project. We're going to find ourselves really in a pickle on allowing almost any project to be halted or put on hold. And that's going to cost us all more money as taxpayers.
If our bond rating goes down, every time we need to borrow money to fix a park or to add more sidewalks, we're going to have to spend more money than we otherwise would have to get those projects, and which means that ultimately there will be fewer of them. The idea is that if we pass these, citizens will have more control, and therefore there will be more control over the budgeting process. The opposite will happen. There'll be less control over the budgeting process, and we'll get less for our dollars rather than more.
If these amendments pass, it's not a matter of whether, it's a matter of how soon the bonds that we pay, the amount that we pay on bonds based on a rating, will increase. Only two things can happen if these amendments pass. One, services can be cut to pay for interest, or taxes can be raised to pay for interest. Why would we want to do that? We don't. And that's why people really need to have a true understanding of what these amendments are all about, because it is a true taking. What is it a taking of? It's a taking of money out of your pocket, because there's never been a threat to San Antonio bigger than what is in front of us today. And we need to make sure that we do everything we can, not just ourselves to recognize the negative impact of these, but to tell our friends, our neighbors, everybody we come in contact with, to ensure on November 6th that we say no to these amendments.
That kind of proposition is not going to really bring the city together, bring the district together. And this is where I think our councilmen are very important, the elected councilmen, to know the views and the concerns of that district and carry and make sure that's known in the councilmen and stand for the district.
Our history shows that we don't have uniform turnout throughout the city, and that there will be parts of the city that will determine how that vote goes, and that not everyone will have a voice at the table. Right now, those issues are decided by your full council. Every district has a vote in that process.
This isn't a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. It's a San Antonio issue. What I want to make sure is that no new taxes and things are levied on our citizens. And if we unfortunately pass these propositions, that's where I fear new taxes would be levied on the citizens. It's not going to give the power back to the people if these things pass. Really what it's going to do is create chaos at City Hall, which is going to have negative consequences for the people.
Proposition A is sort of truncating the democracy of involving more than 20,000 people in a conversation about whether something should change or not in our city, in our 1.2 million people city. There are very specific groups that would take advantage of this agenda, and that they would try and truncate ordinances that they don't like. Things like the free speech ordinance that was passed by a large movement, the paid sick leave that was passed by so many coalitions in our city are going to be in danger. And those are things that benefit the community, and I just don't feel it would be fair.
Proposition A is very dangerous because it would allow 3% of voters to overturn any legislation that our city council makes. I don't understand why people would even want to vote for in a city election, because anything could be overturned so easily.
By the way, there's a lot of companies now that will run around getting signatures for you for so much a signature, which is what happened in this very case, because they got out-of-town people to give a very short-handed, unfair representation that, this will put the power back to the people. It's actually not for the people. It's against the people, because small interest group can take over.
I think it's very well known now that the folks that are in charge of this referendum process paid a political organization $500,000 to go collect signatures. That means that when we say let the people decide, what you're saying is let the people with $500,000 decide what's best for us.
A small band of people that work at the firefighters union who are no longer firefighters, they're politicians, and they're trying to decide how the future of San Antonio should be and how it should grow and how our economy should look like.
This is Congressman Lamar Smith. I urge you to join me in voting no on all three proposed charter amendments. The proposals would divert municipal oversight from the people to the special interest and restrict our elected city council's ability to govern effectively.
When you think about a city manager who has to spend a great deal of time learning their craft, having to come to a city for only an 8-year term, that's ridiculous. Somebody wrote that what would have happened if we had put Greg Popovich on an 8-year term. And I think when you think about that, some people may wonder, yes, you don't want to get rid of good talent. This proposition in no way deals with our current city manager. This proposition is about our future. No one will want to come and build a home in San Antonio, put their kids in school, and know that in the cycle it takes for a council person to be elected, 8 years, they will be gone. That just is not what people would want to do. To be a great city, we have to be able to attract the kind of talent to our city manager position that we have assured will be able to govern this municipality or be able to carry out the wishes of government.
Limiting the time that we would hire a city manager. An executive of that magnitude needs to have an ability to grow a plan.
Proposition B limits the number of years that the city manager can be in power. Why would there be a limit on a city manager? This is purely put forward by special interest groups to try to force turnover of staff that they don't like. This makes no sense. It's like having the head of USAA be limited to 8 years. It means in the final years they're looking for the next job.
Binding arbitration, it's basically not a fair fight. The city of San Antonio is the citizens of San Antonio. This charter amendment goes through is you've given the fire union carte blanche to decide unilaterally when they want to go to binding arbitration. The city, us, citizens, have no more voice.
We are a diverse group of women who organize quickly on our own to add our voices to those already speaking out and saying no to the 3 ballot proposition measures. Solutions to our many challenges will only come through the long, hard, slow process of building power within our communities and through participation of all in our democratic process. We take seriously our responsibility as citizens, and we do not want to support shortcuts that hurt our community.
Our city is moving forward. We're doing great things right now in City Council, ensuring that equity is spread all throughout our great city. These propositions destroy that. So please, on November 6th, vote no.
This is a means to an end for a union to get a better deal. They're trying to do it by weakening the authority of our elected representatives, the people that we put into office to represent all taxpayers to make sure that fair contracts are negotiated on behalf of the taxpayers.
An area of town that suffers a lot of poverty might struggle to go out and hire somebody to get all those signatures. But a wealthier side of town very easily with money can go out and hire somebody and easily turn over decisions by their appeal and their interruption to the governmental process for approving budgets. I'm not interested in seeing us pitted against one another to fight for basic needs that our communities needs, whether it's sidewalks or improvement of homes. All of these things are very, very important to everyone throughout the city.
I'm voting no on the propositions because I don't think they're about people getting power. I think that they will have the opportunity to pit people against people, neighbor against neighbor, part of town against another part of town. And it's a divisive measure, not something that brings us together so that as an entire city we can move forward.
This issue could take away our voice, issues that we have worked so hard for over the years, the equity budget, all of our funding for parks and libraries, all the things that your council members have worked so hard for over the years. could be erased if we allow this to go through.
In the past, we always required a referendum to be 10% of the registered voters who showed up in the last municipal election, which in this case would have been about 70,000 individuals. This petition is to actually reduce that down to a fixed number of 20,000 signatures, and more importantly, allow 180 days, a half a year, for those signatures to be collected. If anything the City Council agrees to, either for or against, can be overturned by gathering 20,000 signatures and moving it from a City Council decision to a referendum. I don't know of any community in the United States that can function in that kind of an environment.
I understand why people would be considering or sitting on the fence. In the big scheme of things, this is not the solution. Interactive dialogue and community involvement with our elected officials is the way we garner the results.
If these amendments pass, that's a long-term hit to the city. City councilmen can be re-elected every 2 years. The mayor can be re-elected every 2 years. That's where they can open their voice and cause themselves to have more involvement in city government, not in the area of causing total chaos to the passage of these amendments.
My concern is that a proposal might come forward where someone's not satisfied with something that's in the budget. That gets overturned, and guess what? You have to rebalance your budget. And what might get cut? You might cut your parks budget. You might cut your streets budget. You might cut your PD budget. Every day we have phone calls into our office, dozens of phone calls into our office that say, please, I need a sidewalk. Please fix my street. There are huge drainage problems in District 7 and in other parts of the city. That's less money that's going to go to those projects.
It's going to make it easy for big companies to buy votes and to get things on the ballot to happen that you probably don't want to happen. And all of a sudden, if I have a big enough paycheck, I can get things on ballots and have everyone in the city vote for something that's happening in your backyard. And I just think that that's not the way cities should be run. Now, everything's going to be a turf war. Everything's going to be a knife fight. If you want to add another mile to 281, that's going to be a fight. If you want to have your garbage picked up more, that's going to be a fight. Anything is going to turn into a fight, and that's just not how city government should be run.
You're turning over your vote to a group that can put 20,000 people together with a small amount of money. They'll take your vote away. They'll make your vote worth nothing. They will control the process instead of you. So if you want to vote, you better go vote now. And you better go vote no.
I'm voting no on Props A, B, and C because I don't want large organizations, private interests to affect my small business growth.
We don't agree on everything, but we do agree our city has to keep growing. So we all agree. Propositions A, B, and C are bad for our city. The propositions endanger our progress. They'll raise taxes, hurt our bond rating, pit neighborhoods against each other. On this, we all agree. Vote no on Propositions A, B, and C.
These amendments are really a disaster for everything that we've been trying to build. We don't want to devolve to a culture where whatever special interest group gets in and it's a fight for who can take the most from the city. That's crazy. That's not the San Antonio that we grew up in. It's not the San Antonio we want to build.
It's incumbent upon elected officials to select the best talent that they could find as our city manager, because they're the ones that are implementing the policy. If you handcuff somebody, a new council coming in with a lower pay and a tenure, you basically put in a lame duck that the day that you hire that person, they're already on the way out. So it doesn't make sense for long-term planning and long-term running of a city like San Antonio that's on the rise.
You know, for the people who say that this is about letting the public decide, I'd pose this question. Why then is Proposition C about one group getting a special right to have secret arbitration when this is supposed to be about public transparency? It's not. It's about special interests.
When you talk about things that are going to be done behind doors, behind closed doors, that's not to the benefit of districts like District 2.
The fire union will basically be able to take the city directly to court and get whatever provisions that they want into a contract, regardless of whether or not that's good for the city or good for the taxpayers, or even good for the members of the firefighters union. The city budget, 66% of it goes to paying the police officers and the firefighters. The Firefighters have been offered a contract that is very similar to what the police officers were offered. The police officers accepted that contract. And so this is not about, whether or not we're going to adequately provide for our first responders. We're already doing that. This is a question about whether or not a particular organization now has additional leverage over the city and can extract unfair concessions from the taxpayer.
What the Firefighters Union is trying to do is take that power and reduce the number of people that can make decisions for us at City Hall by reducing the petition gathering threshold from 70,000 signatures to just 20,000, and to expand the amount of time you get to raise those signatures from 40 days to 180 days.
Citizens of San Antonio do not benefit by any of these three propositions. Those elected representatives that we have should have the opportunity to make decisions without someone putting a stop to that at every turn. That's not the way to govern a city. People forget that this is the 7th largest city in the country. Think about that.
The power is already in the hands of the people to hire or fire a mayor and the 10 council members that represent them.
I would encourage you to vote no if you care about continuing our economic growth, educating our children for the future, and ensuring that we have a city that we can all be proud of 10 years from now.
What these charter amendments do make it easier for small groups of special interest to take away those services and those projects from your neighborhood to pull them into a different part of town. That's not a formula for working together. That's not how a city moves forward together. You elect people to make the tough decisions, to make sure that we're not doing the easy thing or the popular thing, but we're doing the right thing for our community. And that's where we find ourselves today. And I've read the Facebook comments. I've heard some of the lies and the other nasty things that are written about me when I take unpopular positions. However long I'm blessed to be your mayor, whether it's 2 years or 8 years, I want to be able to look my son in the eye and tell him that I did the right thing. So I'm asking you to go vote no on propositions A, B, and C. Go vote no on higher taxes. Go vote no for lower city services. Go vote no for putting our entire city at risk. Whether you're a parent, whether you're a small business owner, or whether you're just an average neighbor who, like me, wants to serve our city, make sure that you do the best thing for our city, and that is go vote no on propositions A, B, and C on November 6th.
Vote no on Props A, B, and C this November 6th.
On November the 6th, go vote no for all of the charter amendments.
Vote no for these propositions.
I will be voting no on Proposition A, B, and C.
Go vote no on Propositions A, B, and C on November 6th.
Go vote no on Propositions A, B, and C.
Go vote no for Props A, B, and C on November 6th.
Vote no on Props A, B, and C.
Go vote no on propositions A, B, and C on November 6th.
I'm asking you to vote no on all three propositions on November 6th. They're a bad idea.
I'm voting no on Props A, B, and C. Please join me on November 6th in going to vote no.
I want all of you to vote on Proposition A, B, and C. No, a big no. Thank you.